Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on which part of the country you're dialing in from, and particularly a good afternoon to our friends in Victoria. And hopefully the signs are promising, and you'll be coming out of restrictions and lockdown in no time soon. Just before we get started, I will do the traditional welcome to country. And in this welcome, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we sit or stand, depending on whether you're sitting or standing, and we pay our respects to the elders past and present. So without further ado, my name's Robert Wulff. I'm a patent attorney and a principal within Griffith Hack, and today I'm joined by Nicola or Nicolas Rea, who is the CEO of RegenX Systems. They're a client of ours. They've been a client of ours for the last couple of years. And why I thought this was a really good story is because it's got the classic ups and downs, trials and tribulations of a startup, and the journey that they go on, and the pivots and changes and turns and twists that they have to make, and how we try and make sure that the IP is still relevant and up to date with what they're doing. So it's quite a good story for us today. You can see there Nicola's background. He's the CEO of RegenX Systems, but he has an amazing background. We decided not to go into the full background today. You can certainly look him up on LinkedIn and see his profile, and you can see my profile there as well on LinkedIn. So just a couple of housekeeping items. There's a Q&A box on your control panel, and if you've got any questions, we're going to take those at the end of the session. Nicola and I will speak for around 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. We'll see how we go. But if you've got any questions, put them into the Q&A box, and Dominic, our moderator, will monitor for them. And if he thinks they're really worthwhile and burning, he'll interrupt us. The other thing just to mention is that we will be taking, we're happy to have a sort of a Q&A kind of discussion. This is quite informal, this discussion, so I'm just going to be asking Nicola a series of questions, and then he'll just answer, and so we can take that same approach at the end. Keep it nice and relaxed. So without further ado, we'll get started. So Nicola, if you just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, and then tell us a little bit about RegenX Systems, the technology, and how your invention moved from what was initially quite a difficult inventor position through to its current positioning and design.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Robert. The journey has certainly been quite interesting from a startup viewpoint. My background is very simple. I'm a Frenchman, not a Francophile, but a Frenchman, so I don't drive a Peugeot or anything like that. I came to Australia 30 years ago to play rugby. I was invited to play rugby here after I finished my army, which was compulsory in France at the time. Very quickly I got injured and finished my career at the ripe old age of 22 years old. I then went back to school to study. I did my master's at Macquarie University, or MGSM, which is a graduate school. And I've been working throughout my career for engineering firms or engineering related fields and consumer goods as well. In the last 25 years, I've been the CEO or MD, local MD for Australia and New Zealand of 5 various companies. And I officially retired from corporate 2 years ago to take on more of a laid-back role, I would suppose, from my family, and took a year off, and then got involved with RegenX System. And the reason I got involved with RegenX System is because my wife, who's also an attorney, was already involved with Robert in the previous year with this. We were facing a situation which was not uncommon, but particular in the sense that the actual inventor based in France had left the company. And we were left with a decision, the critical decision, to either relieve the project and take it from the ashes, or let go. And so the onset of the project was not exactly as smooth sailing as I would hope it would have been. And that's where we find ourselves now, a year into the project. We've decided to continue with the help of Robert and his team to continue on.
Excellent, thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about the product itself? And we might get Dom just to put up the next slide and the slide thereafter.
Okay,
yeah.
So RegenX, as the name suggests, is a regeneration system, which is a closed loop system, and it goes after. If you can see the motor onto the slide there, in between you have basically a transmission unit, and this is nothing new. This exists in many fields and in many areas, but the electrical industry, as you can imagine, for various type of segments, is quite prominent now with everything going electric or even hydrogen these days. What this particular product has done for us is to recreate the transmission with having the feature of regeneration added on to it. So regeneration means that the current from the transmission is regenerated back to a solar panel or to a source like a battery or something like that. The key features are it's a magnetic mechanical transmission. And the benefits of having magnets run into without going into too much technical jargon here, of using magnets, is that you have no friction or mechanical losses, which is a massive plus for many industries in terms of maintenance and added on costs. So RegenX is pretty much a mechanical gearbox with magnets.
Thank you. So what are the benefits of having a magnetic, so to speak, gearbox or transmission, Nicola?
So generally you would have gearboxes who have elements which are touching each other, creating friction, creating losses, creating added maintenance, wear and tear, and so on. Where with the magnets, there is no touching. So perhaps, Dominic, you might want to put the next slide up so we can perhaps have a more cross-section view. And as you can see here, we have a planetary wheel, which is a surrounding wheel, driven by a driving wheel, the one in the middle. None of those elements, the red parts, which are magnets, are touching each other. Yeah. And that in itself is interesting, because if you look at aeronautics, or if you look at defense products for a submarine, where silence is really a key feature to a transmission or a gearbox, this befits the application perfectly. Equally, you could be using this to any level or any size, from a power tool drill to a large submarine or large army vessel.
So yeah, so the benefit there, obviously, Nicola, is that the gearbox is quiet, the transmission is very quiet, and then as we've discovered on the journey, the invention actually resides in the regenerative capability.
That's right. And that particular feature is the one that we have protected via the IP. So the reduction gear as itself is again, as I said, and I'm repeating, is nothing new. It's the part of regeneration that is something that is completely new, which we've protected.
Excellent, thank you. So what point did you come to the conclusion that you needed to protect the IP, Nicola?
When a previous engineer who had drawn and designed the system and was based in France decided that he wanted to move back to his original country of Romania, we'd lodged the patent application in the Netherlands for the rough prototype, which was the original one without the regenerative feature on it. We then spoke to Griffith Hack to review the prior art, and then we advised from memory that the patent would perhaps in the Netherlands not be so successful. So we made a decision to engage via your help, and you facilitated the sourcing of that engineer in Australia, to take the technology further, to enhance it to the regenerative piece, to ensure it was novel and invented step, so that we could actually have a very watertight IP protection on it.
Yeah, so that was an interesting sort of part of the journey, wasn't it? That we suddenly realised that you'd invested all this time and money in the original prototype to only discover that there wasn't anything protectable in it. And I think you were alluding to that at the beginning. You could have just thrown your hands up in the air and given it all away, but we decided to engage a consulting mechanical engineer and really enhance the product, take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think in cases like us, where we were left with not much to work with, the decision to continue on with the advice from a larger company was fruitful, because in the end, it allowed us to have a better roadmap, more certainty about our way forward, more clarity about our way forward, and also enabled us to be able to have a network of people, which was over and above the IP protection, to have a network of people to assist us. Because we are a mom and dad company. I mean, you know, this is my wife and I's company going global. It's really critical to have the assistance of larger company around you when you're in that situation. And this is now a year ago. So we've now spent the last year really refining all of this, and then coming on the other end with sound promises.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. That kind of leads into our next question. So our experience is that IP can be significantly enhanced when the business has a clear understanding from the outset, or even along the way, of its value proposition, and also what really gives it competitive advantage. Our experience again with the drafting and the preparation of the patent application and going forward is having that clear understanding can help us frame the invention and also think about where we might focus the protection on. So in the case of your business, you know, how did you go about defining and identifying that value proposition and where the sustainable advantage was?
Well, following the research that was done, once we had decided to go ahead with the IP protection, there was a certain amount of research done by your team. A document came out which was pretty much became the roadmap and the value proposition in itself. In terms of the vernacular, it was simple enough for people to understand, and not only us but also our customers, to understand where the real benefits were, the ones we've already highlighted, loss of mechanical losses and so on and so forth, but also having a clear understanding as to where we differ from the competition. So sometimes with engineers, they have lots of things in their mind, which doesn't necessarily translate into something on paper that is black and white and creates a project. So what we had to do, and we had that in a document that was given to us by your team, a complete clarity as to what was the difference and what were the key points and benefits in a language that was simplistic enough. That was not actually a legal language, that was simplistic enough for anybody to understand. And for the last year, we now have used that to not only recreate our marketing collaterals, but also our engineering discussions with various contractors and so on.
Yeah, that's a good night again. A nice segue. You know, I think people sometimes look at patents and look at patent applications and the whole process as being very legal, and forget that there's not only is there a marketing or a sales aspect to it, but there's also a story. And certainly, I think it can enhance the value of the document if, you know, as best one can without it becoming too jingoistic, but build that story into the patent application, and also build the value proposition into the patent application, which is certainly something that we seek to do. Our experience as well is that it's a really good question to ask the inventors or the innovators or the founders. You know, where is the money going to come from? Where, even if you guys aren't ultimately going to be the party that commercializes it, but follow the money trail. Where is the revenue going to be generated, or how is it going to be generated? I mean, is it a cash flow? Is it a savings proposition, or so on? And again, just applying that that kind of thinking, Nicola, how would you describe your technology as being a bit of a game changer in its industry?
Well, I think again, technology moves so fast, and we're talking about protection. Technology moves so fast that you're a game changer for a period of time until somebody catches up with you, and that generally this day and age goes very, very fast. So I think where we see ourselves as a game changer is that we go across so many industries that it gives us an edge. So for example, a lot of the contacts we've had are mostly from Europe, I must be honest here. And they were, for example, the fleet of fishing boats in France, 12,000 fishing boats, have to be completely retrofitted to be re-equipped with electrical motors in them. And so there's a project there waiting for us. They looked at our technology because of the regeneration piece together with the technology that we already have in the reduction gear. And we're very enthused by the novelty of what it brought. And in their words, say, well, we haven't seen anything like this before. So that's for the boating industry. The marine wind turbine is also another major industry, and there's lots of companies like Siemens and so on who continuously develop new product, medical equipment, water pumps, irrigation, HVAC, aeronautics, defense, whether it be tanks, whether it would be refuelers in the ocean, whether it would be submarines, I mentioned before. All these see this technology for various parts of the features and benefits to be ideal for what they're doing. So it wasn't a case of we knew from the onset that we had all these key benefits. When we actually spoke to people and various OEMs and interested parties, then it became clear that we had specific things that were very interesting to them.
Yeah, and I think it's really great for us to have that level of insight and that level of feedback from customers if we possibly can, and try and build that into the patent application, because it just enhances the overall value of the IP. That it's tracking alongside the product and how it's going to be marketed. So I have to say that going on this particular journey with you, even though we had a few little roadblocks or pitfalls that we had to overcome, it's been really worthwhile to get to this point. As I say, it really enhances the IP protection and the IP outcome, and I think it will make it a much easier patent application to. As you know, it's a long and drawn out process, but to get it through in the various jurisdictions. So just going on to really what you saw as being the most important aspects of this process. Would you say that there are any decisions that you had to make along the way that had an impact on your business, for example?
Sure, but I think the key aspect of the process of protecting our IP for us was the clarity and the support. And I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I think without that, the way forward would have been a lot harder, a lot arduous, because we had a backing, if that makes any sense. I mean, again, we're a mom and dad company, sure, with some experience and so on, but the backing of an international company behind us gave us the certainty and the clarity and the support that we needed in order to go forward. That means we had less questions, we had less fears, less ambiguity as to where we were at, what was possible, what was not possible. And I think along the way, having that confident approach, the consultative approach from Griffith Hack, gave us that backing that was critically needed. The decisions that were made thereafter were so far pretty much engineering-based decisions, so very much operational decisions. The key decisions are now as to what the strategy is, how is the company going to evolve, how during COVID times are we going to be able to seduce licensed manufacturers without actually being able to see them face to face. So these are more strategic decisions. And also one key aspect is that confidence also allowed us to continue to invest, my wife and I, into this business ourselves. So to this day, we are 100% shareholders of the company, and something to be proud of. Going forward, if we can still continue to be like that is a question mark. I think I have the answer to that, but we will take it as far as we can under the Australian banner of high-end technology. And the key decisions on the back of what we've achieved already in the last 12 months are the ones that are going to come in the next month or two.
Excellent. So you've kind of answered a couple of my subsequent questions, but just in terms of suggestions for other companies that are considering protecting their IP, what would be some of the learnings that you've taken and that you would provide?
I think people sometimes just hold things very close to themselves and are reluctant to open up about the opportunity that they have for various reasons, and I'm not there to judge that, but I think for us, we did exactly the opposite. We opened up to be supported, and that worked in our favor. I think being confident in your ability, in your capability, it's not always better somewhere else. You've got to believe in yourself. Resilience is a big one. I think, of course, there are times where things don't go as fast as one would like in terms of the development or sourcing customers or revenue or cash flow or anything like that. But with resilience, with time, and a good, well-prepared plan and value proposition, understanding your marketing fundamentals, having the right backing, you're preparing yourself, setting yourself for success. It's really the key comment there as to what I would be looking for if I were to do this again.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicola. So just really, you kind of answered this to some extent, but if you could say your ideal future for RegenX, what would that look like?
At the moment, we are going through a prototype phase, which is very costly to finalize the product itself, but also to calculate the level of regeneration, because it's fine to say we can do all this, but until it's calculated in a very accurate way and having to build up that data, really you don't have a lot to talk about. So we're building all this up, which again builds up a lot more of our IP, competitive advantage, value proposition, and so on. This will be finalized before the end of the year. Where to next is really a question of a global expansion. Again, the investors may be here, maybe there, and we need to look at licensed manufacturing in various sections without going into too much detail or revealing exactly what our strategy is going to be at. Licensed manufacturing seems to be the most appropriate for us, because building a factory, for example, here in Australia to then sell a product like this in various sizes, some of which will be custom made, is not really feasible to do. Whilst we would like to do that, it's just not feasible. So we're looking for licensed manufacturer, and in the short term is to have open an office in Europe. There's a lot of indication that a lot of industries, particularly centered around the clean tech and green tech areas, and the investments are in and around Europe, and certainly for high-end engineering, Switzerland is the area. So, and again, another advice for people going for in a startup in an engineering field, you have to be where the game is, and you have to be present in some form with the right backing and also the right protection. So that's the future for us.
Excellent. And it's kind of makes sense, but it's also sort of disappointing that, once again, Australian technology has to move offshore to be commercialized. But I guess the Europeans, particularly for this kind of technology, are very open and in a way demand this kind of performance and this kind of technology. So So we certainly wish you the very best with that. We're still at an early stage of the IP journey, so we're going to be going on the journey with you, and assisting wherever we can. And I have to say, enjoying the journey very much. It's been very nice to get to know you better through this procedure and this event. So I'm going to hand it over to Dominic. Dominic, are there any questions that we've got from the audience?
Yeah, so we've got one from Chris H, who is specifically a question for Nicola. How did you come to the decision that filing a patent was the best approach, given that in order to file a patent, you have to make your IP public, in a sense, and risk it being copied / replicated?
Again, we were at a stage where we had to make a decision on the business, whether it was going forward or we were going to stop where we were. We had enough confidence in the research that going forward was the way forward, I suppose. Pardon, but and that allowed us to actually have some confidence to go forward, despite the risks that were there. We felt that we had enough engineering backing, and just pure backing into our technology that we were prepared to risk it being copied at some other stage, which we still are there now. But I suppose, like I said before, we are in an environment that moves so fast that with this type of product, being first in best dress is not necessarily going to win you the game. It's to be the most prepared and accurate in how you deliver the product, not how fast you are into the market.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And I think it'd probably be relevant to ask kind of Robert well, if you can do some explanation around, the risks involved in making filing a patent, and obviously people potentially replicating the technology or copying the technology.
Yes, it's an interesting one, because this, as I say, this one had a few twists and turns. So as Nicola was indicating, there was an inventor who was living in France but decided to move to Romania, who had the original concepts. Fortuitously, and hand this credit to this to your partner Jacinta, had made sure that the appropriate agreements were in place, so that RegenX did actually own the technology, which was excellent. Would have been quite difficult otherwise. But the benefit of, at least of that initial work that was done, was there was some initial patent searching that was done that we could rely on. And that led us to then do some further searching and investigation into the literature. Funnily enough, we were also able to search on that inventor's name as well, and that dug up some much older patents that he'd been playing on in the past. So that, in a way, helped us frame the landscape that we could evaluate against, and also really to look at the where the product sat, where it had moved to in terms of its novelty, inventiveness, and whether there were any infringement risks. So we were able to so to speak, take the negative and turn it into a positive, and give us a level of confidence in terms of the IP that we were moving forward with. So I can see there's another question there from George Paul. This is to Nicolas. Do you want to read that out, Dominic?
Yeah, sure. So George Paul has asked, your technology is not totally clear to me. What is the basic magnetic technology, and how do you know that you've chosen the biggest market for magnetic technology? And then I think, what have you missed? I'm unsure what that last bit means, but yeah, I think the first couple of questions would be probably one that you could answer, something you could answer.
But we are still sourcing the market, so we don't know for sure that we are after the bigger markets. But one inevitably is going to be the one that gives us the maximum volume for one application, because making custom-made sizes generally is a very difficult thing to do. It's very costly to do, and generally doesn't return a lot of money. So the idea here is to find a market where one size, this will come in multiple sizes, can be befitted to many type of motors, for example, in line. And so it's not a question of which is the biggest market. It's which market can we sustain the longest with our product. As far as not being sure about the technology, it's a reduction gear. So an electric motor that has a revolution of 200 rounds per minute reduced down to 100 rounds per minute via transmission gear to, say, a propeller or something else like that, vastly reduces the wear and tear on the motor for various applications. And the advantage of the magnets is that they are not touching. So you don't have the disadvantage of the mechanical losses, the friction, the noise, and all the maintenance that is attached to it. So you're reducing vastly your cost on normal transmissions that exist out there, which are not magnetic, but more metal based. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does, yes.
I'll just add to it. So the game changer was that we've got, obviously, people are moving towards electric motors and renewable energy powered electric motors. So where we realized that we could regenerate and recuperate some of that electricity through some very clever engineering. So taking advantage of the geometry and the configuration of the transmission and the gearbox, and then using that to recapture some of the electricity makes the whole thing very, very attractive. Starts to become extremely attractive in terms of cost savings and efficiencies and so on.
Yeah. And perhaps to add to that as well, the electric motor market worldwide today is valued at $100 billion US. So that's the market, really, to answer the question precisely, and that's growing in the last 2 years at 4.5% per annum. So that's the market targeting. Sorry?
100 billion?
100 billion US.
Oh, it's 100 million, is it?
Billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
massive market. And you only need a slice of that, don't you, Nicola? And you're talking about significant revenues.
That's right. And so there's various sizes and shapes and so on of electric motors, but all of them are destined, or most of them are destined for production of goods that are cleaner and greener. And so we want to be morphing into that because it's not just the business as well, it's also the story behind it. This is a clean tech, green tech product. You want to leave a legacy behind. Or we have just not made a gearbox that we've sold to hundreds of millions of people, but you want to be able to tell your kids one time that what you've made and what you've conceived was something that was actually a legacy for various markets.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Brilliant. Just before we, I guess, kind of wrap up, I don't believe there are any other questions. So just to let everybody know that there will be a recording of this, which will be shared with all the attendees, so you can review this as well. I don't think there's much benefit in sending the slides across because they're just there to help. And I will leave you with Robert to sum up and say thank you. But from my side, thank you very much to both of you for such an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Dom, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Nicola for volunteering and being effusive and very considerate in giving up time. And we've had a few sessions where we've gone through this. As I say, it's a magnificent technology. I think it's going to quote Nicola. I think it is a game changer, and working with both Nicola and Jacinta has been a real pleasure and will continue to be so, I have no doubt. So we do wish you all the very best with the ongoing development of the product, and again, thank you for making the time today. So most appreciated.
No, thank you, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you everybody.
We'll goodbye, and we'll see you again at one of our upcoming events. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.